I started a couple of decades ago with my really creative work. Before that, I considered myself a seamstress and a sewer of patches on jeans. But around 2000, I was asked to do a marking of a walking trail for Walk Against Want. So I went out into the scrub with some cloth that my mum had torn into strips so that I could do some crocheting. And some was coloured and some were just white. So I put the white fabric out in the trees for the short run, and the coloured pieces went on the trees every 200 feet or so that marked the longer path, which was about 3 kilometres. And that was on the Friday. And on Saturday, we had a huge storm come into the area. I thought nothing of it. I'd done my part. Anyway, Sunday came and I got this frantic call from the lady who was organising it, say, "Where are your markers?" I said, "I put them out. They're there." Well, it took me 3 weeks to get back into the scrub to remove what I considered to be litter, which was my fabric. And what the wind and rain had done, the wind had wrapped the strips of cloth around the branches. The rain had soaked the fabric, and I had 3 weeks of intermittent rain over that cool period during winter. So I proceeded to take all my cloth back from the scrub. Being frugal, I can't throw things away. So I looked at my great big mound of torn strips and muck and insects and bark and whatever. Well, I threw it in the machine, didn't I, to see what would happen. And as soon as that cloth hit the water, all these colours emerged from the fabric. It was like a magic interchange. What was white and dirty now became ochres and yellows and oranges. It was just one of those moments that change your perspective on life. So that was the start of my fabric wrapping of trees in the local area. So I'm a tree wrapper. And the trees I use are any species of eucalypt, and most of the acacias growing in our area have always been really generous with the dyes and stains that they give me into the fabric. The fabric I use is generally second-hand, third-hand, fourth-hand stuff that other people throw away. I do collect some things from second-hand shops, like old bedding and old tablecloths and placemats, anything like that that comes my way. Old clothing. I have been known to put a few shirts and t-shirts out in the scrub as well. And depending on the season and the variety, the species of tree, I get a whole range of different colours. I've had from yellow through ochres to browns to chocolate to black. I've had greens and blues. I've even had pinks from the different species. I have wrapped trees mainly in areas of mallee, though I am up in the woodland area where I live. So they have mallee and woodland eucalypts. And I've been as far away as Kangaroo Island. I was wrapping similar species there, but I got different colours because the soil is different. And that was another eye-opener, because the soil influences what colours the trees will release. Of course, being on an island, there was a lot of sea spray. The salts on the leaves and in the soil were much heavier than what we have here at home. So again, the colours were different. The wrapping technique is fairly fluid. I don't plan anything. I just take my sheets out into the scrub and I just wrap. Sometimes it pulls this way, sometimes it folds that way. It just happens, and I don't approach it with anything in mind. I just simply go and wrap the trees. My materials are cotton-based. Most of it is coming from the cotton, but polycotton works well. I do linen, I've done wool, I've done silk, and I've done a range of sheer synthetics whose origin I really don't know, but all to varying degrees have soaked up the stains from the trees. I don't use silk so much anymore because it being an animal protein, the insects love to eat it. So I often come home with more holes than I have material. And that involves a reasonable amount of patching, which I don't mind. I'm very good at patching. Wool also suffers the same fate, though to a lesser degree. The bugs just love eating wool. I had intended to start with using just cottons, and they became quite rare in my collecting area here, so I went to the next thing, my polycottons. They take it up differently. From the same tree, if you did a cotton and a polycotton and a wool, you would probably find that the cotton would absorb most, then the wool, then the polycotton. But again, it sometimes depends on the season. If I get enough rain and there's enough space between each incident of moisture to dry and wet, to dry and wet, to dry and wet over the season, then that will affect the amount of colour that the fabric's able to absorb. Some years we've just had not much rain at all, and I've had to rely on the spring and autumn fog or mist or the frost, allowing the moisture to be absorbed by the fabric, and it all makes a difference. I try to do a season for a wrap, so I go out in April, May and pull back the cloth about October, November. However, life sometimes happens, so there are some years it stays out for 2 or 3 years before I can get back to it. And again, that changes what happens to the cloth over time. More patches if I have to leave it out there for 3 years. What I have noticed over the last decade is that if I put it out in April, May, I sometimes don't need to take it in until February, because we have been getting moisture later and later over the season. So we get moisture now at the end of November into December, and sometimes January. We get quite heavy falls here now. Didn't happen over a decade ago. It was just simply a winter wrap. But now I don't panic when November comes around, and I haven't yet got out to pull the cloth in. When I first started, I was very much a quilt maker, and I turned just about everything that came in into a quilt. Then I did a little bit of exploratory work with recycling paper, and I did a lot of casting, again of trees and the human body. And I used the fabric as a part of that process, so that when I used the cast to create the positive back, it had my material on it. I really, really enjoyed the softness of the cloth. It just kept me doing quilts and doing soft things. I made a lot of clothing for myself and others out of my stained fabric. And then the shed out the back got full of stuff that wasn't sold, so I had to rethink the process. And that's about where I am now. I've started using my fabric as a pictorial element on canvas. My quilts that I made with the fabric from the scrub were all landscapes. Some of them were dealing with water flow, some were dealing with parched landscape, misuse of land, the way we carve it up when we go against what nature has established. We put straight lines across creeks, all that kind of thing. It was just a busyness in my head that I needed to say with my cloth. And I'm essentially doing the same thing. Lost the softness of those lovely quilts by attaching them to canvas as a stretched form. So I'm busy with that now, and I've been there for a little while. However, about a decade ago, I started building with my crochet hook, and I've gone on to use my fabric strips that I actually tie the bigger pieces onto the tree with as the material I use to crochet or stitch. And I'm now building vessels. I've been exhibiting for a couple of decades. When I first started exhibiting, I was doing up to 7 a year. I was flat out. I thoroughly enjoyed it. I could run faster then. I can't run as fast now. So I do 1, sometimes 2 a year. I always like to take part in the Sala exhibition. It's the South Australian Living Artists Festival. They like it to be current work that's exhibited. And anybody who considers themselves creative can get out there, find an exhibition space and carry on. A lot of my time now is passing on my skills to others. I spend a lot of time preparing samples for teaching, and I work out of a little place called Recreate, which is a part of the Natural Resource Centre at Mount Pleasant. They run an education program in sustainability open to the public and to the education department. So I work in schools quite a lot with children, teaching them a whole range of different skills that I've picked up over my lifetime. And interestingly, not much to do with fabric.
Thanks for watching my video. If you would like to see more, click the subscribe button. If you would like to support making these videos, you can donate via the button on the banner of my YouTube channel. You will also find my social media links there.